deal. All right. So I think we're all set here. We're just going to get started. I first wanted to share with you guys some images of things that have kind of spoken to me over the last few weeks. This has been crazy times for all of us, you know, crazy in lots of different ways. But some of these images kind of talked to me in a way that translated to the cooperative world. The first one there on the left is kind of the caterpillar scenario. You know, when we're in the cocoon, we're kind of, you know, uncomfortable and uncertain, and we don't know what's happening. But it's about growth and new birth and change, and that really spoke to me about the scenario that we're in. The earth is changing, the world is changing, we are changing, and I think we're going to come out of this stronger. The poem on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, it really spoke to me when I found it, when I saw it online this week. And I don't know the author of this poem, but I took the liberty of changing the word kindness to cooperation. And it says, and maybe this is how we learn the value of cooperation, where the world is like a small child with a fever, trying her best to make herself feel better. Maybe we find our unity in the near losing of everything, where we have no choice but to depend on each other. This is what it takes to realize that we're in this together. A man helps someone he dislikes because they are in danger. A neighbor delivers groceries to everyone ill on her street. Old friends forgive each other. Stop acting like strangers. Maybe this time the revolution arrives dressed as kindness or cooperation. People help each other despite their differences, understanding truly that without the aid of others, we would be in this alone. And it really spoke to me, and I hope it speaks to you too. And I want to just take a second to say that it's okay to feel however you're feeling. We might be scared. We might be unsure. We might be worried about our co-ops, and all of that is okay. And I saw something else online today, and I think, you know, a side note is we're all probably spending more time online than we ever have. We thought we were spending a lot of time online before. But today I saw a post that said, take a moment to relax your brow, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm doing that all the time. My brow is furrowed, my jaw is clenched, my hips are tight. So I think, you know, this is a great opportunity for us all to take a breath and to take a moment. We have time on our hands in our homes, and it's okay to feel how we're feeling. But what we're seeing, I think, is a shift in our economy, in our way of thinking about things. I have some resources at the end of the slides here of some articles that have been important to me that I have relied on the last couple of weeks. And one is about a shift to community capitalism, where the focus is more on the community rather than the individual. And I think if you've studied business at all or our economy in any kind of form, you know that there's a philosophy of we versus me. And in a me society, we're concerned about, how does this impact me? How does this affect me? Am I getting the right price? Am I getting the best value? And in a we economy, we're more focused on the whole. And how does this impact our environment, our communities? And in my opinion, we're shifting back towards that type of thought process. Knowing where our food comes from is more important than ever. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. But when I was seeing images when this whole pandemic started of empty grocery stores and meat cases that were barren and grocery produce aisles that had nothing in them, I also saw images of co-ops, specifically Green Top Grocery. Farmers were constantly bringing supplies to the store daily. Farmers were bringing more than they've ever brought and selling out that day, and then the next day bringing more. And I saw and I was reaffirmed that when we develop a local food system, we don't have to worry about food shortages. We don't have to worry about runs on the grocery store. We know our local farmers, and we know who's touched that food and how many people have touched that food, and where it's come from. So it's important, I think, to think about those things, and the fact that we're relying on each other more than we ever have. And the sheer act of us staying home is an act of cooperation. We may not be together, but we are all acting together. And to me, that is the ultimate demonstration of cooperation. And I think we can leverage that as we, as we are communicating with our audiences. Some things that I'd like you guys to consider as you're thinking about messaging. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any of the other things that I wanted to mention. Oh, yes. Okay. So we want to take some time to think about our tone and the content of our communication strategy right now. If you don't have a communication strategy or a communication plan, this is an excellent time to be thinking about that. Many of you, I know, have brand standards, have specifics around use of your logo and tone of your communication. And it's a really good time to pull those out and make sure that you're applying them the way that they're intended and or tweaking them to fit the current situation. As we're messaging, I think we can provide an optimistic and a positive source of reliable information for our audiences. And I kind of see that happening in buckets. So there's an education bucket, an inspiration bucket, and a connection bucket. And we can provide content to our audiences that kind of fit those themes. Also, people are looking for actionable items. We all want to feel connected and part of the community. And so by providing ways for people to be part of the organization by taking action, I think it can be really a critical tool to use right now. Things can be as simple as advertising a local farmer CSA, buying a share of a CSA. Perhaps, you donate that share to a local food bank. Gift certificates to local restaurants who are using producers. Asking people to become an owner or a member is an actionable way to be a part of the community. And volunteers. We all have needs, volunteer needs, and I think this is an excellent time to make a call for those folks and to utilize them virtually. I also think it's important to maintain transparency when we're communicating with our audiences. We often get wrapped up in what we're doing behind the scenes and forget that there are people who care what we're doing and that they're interested in what we're doing. And our board meetings may seem tedious and monotonous to us, especially in a virtual world where we're not, face to face or sharing food while we're meeting. But a picture of your virtual board meeting tells an excellent story to your ownership base. And I think talking about your process is critical, especially in this time. If we go quiet, if we stop communicating, our audience is going to wonder what has happened to us. So we can be as transparent as we possibly can without sharing, valuable information that might, not necessarily need to be shared, like location information, those kinds of things. I'm not advocating that we're sharing more information than is safe or necessary, but making sure to communicate what is happening, what we are doing, that we are checking our mailboxes and we are processing ownership emails and we are still meeting virtually. Or those are all ways we can clearly articulate what's happening behind the scenes transparently. And I like this video function over here. I can kind of scroll through and see who's on here. It's so fun to see you all. Understanding also, I think it's important to understand that everyone is facing unique challenges. We're all experiencing this in different ways. You know your community best. Give yourself some grace, give your community some grace. We're all going through this for the very first time, and it's all uncharted territory for all of us. So I've noticed some really exceptional examples that we're going to get into, but before we do that, I just wanted to take a quick second to talk about your audience. So we have done a good job as co-ops, as startup co-ops, in creating an online community through our social media channels, through our email and our social media. And I think if you have not done that, or if you'd like to grow your audience, there are some ways that you can consider doing that. Crossover audiences are a great way to grow your base. So consider co-hosting an event, an online event, a virtual event, or co-promoting other organizations that have similar values to yours. And what an example that comes to mind perhaps would be a partnership with an environmental organization. Perhaps it's on composting, where it can be co-hosted by the co-op and the environmental organization, promoted to both audiences. So you're growing your base, they're growing their base, and you can help each other. If you're not using all of the social media channels that you have available to you, this might be a great opportunity to explore some of those others. I think we're all very good about Facebook and probably Instagram, but if we're not using Twitter or other social media avenues, and I see lots of people using TikTok these days. I don't even know what that is, but this is a good time to explore some of those other channels that we might not have been utilizing. Also a good time to consider paid strategies, Facebook advertising, for example. If you have not done that yet, this is a great way to reach new audiences. In fact, I will say that since the pandemic started, I consider myself pretty well versed in the local food scene, although moving to Texas, has presented new challenges, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what's happening in terms of local food here. But I will say that my social media feed has been inundated with local farmers trying to get product to me, selling CSA shares, selling delivery, farmers I never knew existed, and yet I feel very well connected to the local food movement. So folks are utilizing that as an opportunity to reach new customers, and it's a way for us to do that too. This is also a great time to fine tune and update your website. People are going online more now than ever. And so if you need to make updates, if there's outdated content there, if the board listing is not current, if your email addresses aren't accurate, this is a great time to do that. It's also a really good time to validate contact information for your ownership base. So as we move forward in the development of our co-ops, reaching our owners via different channels, takes on new meaning. Sometimes we're reaching them via email, sometimes it's social media, sometimes it's snail mail. And making sure that we have up-to-date contact information is really important. So this is a really good time to manage your email bounce list, or check in with owners and ask them to update their contact information. But all of those are ways that we can kind of grow that online audience and make sure that we're connecting with as many people as possible. So let's look at some examples. I've pulled out just a handful of examples of messaging and co-ops that I think are doing a really good job in terms of communicating what's happening currently in our world to how this relates to the co-op world. So the buy one leave one image from Stronger, what was Stronger Together Co-op, welcome to the table, I think speaks a lot. The fact that there's a run on toilet paper is baffling to me. I still don't quite understand it. But I didn't buy any toilet paper. I have toilet paper in my house. I'm hoping that when I need toilet paper, there'll be some on the shelves. But I think that kind of speaks to us cooperating jointly together. There's a great post here from Food Shed, and I'm going to share these slides with Jacqueline. So these links are active. If you get the slides, you can actually take a look at the post. But we all have a lot of questions, but we're stronger together. And this is an ask, a plea to become an owner of the co-op. And I think that's an excellent message. We're seeing co-ops share shopping tips, how to social distance shop. And I think that's great. Even for startup co-ops, all of our owners are currently shopping somewhere, and we can create some tips and strategies to help them navigate this current world. Silverton Food Co-op has some really good messaging about what they're doing behind the scenes. Distance makes us stronger, you know, and it talks about what they're doing at their virtual board meeting and what they're working on behind the scenes. And so clearly articulating to their audience what's happening behind the scenes. And then I hope everyone's seen the image here of the grocery store heroes. I think this is a pretty powerful message, and at no other time in history has the grocery store been such an integral part of our existence and our safety and our life. And the people who are working in those grocery stores really truly are our heroes. We're going to talk more about the image on the left in terms of the distance a product goes from producer to consumer. And you can tell by this image here that when you go the CSA or the farmer's market route, which is towards the bottom of that image, that the contact level there is significantly different, not to mention the nutritional value of the food. But we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So the cooperative principles are, you know, an integral part of why a lot of us do what we do and do the work that we do. And many co-ops are asking us questions. Where people are asking, should we take a break? You know, can we make progress during these times? Can we ask for ownership shares? Should we keep raising capital? And all of those are very valid questions, and very, you know, necessary questions. But my answer to that is certainly that you should not take a break. You should not stop. I'm certain it's not that you shouldn't take a break. You shouldn't stop. Maybe it is time to take a break, take a breath, plan, prioritize. But I certainly don't believe that we should stop. If we utilize the opportunity we have in front of us, I think we can position ourselves to be even in a stronger position than we were before the pandemic started. And we really and truly can live out the cooperative principles virtually. So I've made a list here of some examples and ideas that I think translate into the virtual world. In terms of membership, ownership, you can absolutely continue to promote ownership. You want to thoughtfully consider how you're messaging that. You know, we don't necessarily, you know, want to discredit at all what's happening in the world, but becoming part of this community can be a real tangible way for folks to feel like they're making a difference, they're making an impact. So making sure that your membership applications are online, I think is critical. If it's not yet, you probably need to consider that. If you don't offer payment plans or subsidized membership options, this might be a really good opportunity to incorporate that into your ownership plan as well. Folks are, you know, we're facing unprecedented unemployment, people are losing their jobs, businesses are closing, and we want to be sensitive to the fact that finances can be a challenge for people, absolutely. And a way to kind of create some community around membership is asking your ownership base to share their owner number, or maybe the date that they became owners or when they became owners, and creating a conversation about that. Democratic member control, certainly a principle we can execute virtually. Online meetings, virtual meetings are a great opportunity, be that annual meetings or board meetings. I think making sure to provide your ownership base with a way to participate in virtual meetings, I think can be really impactful, so that they know how to participate, they know where to log in and how that works. Online voting is an option, and online polls and surveys are a great way to kind of create community and engagement with our ownership base and with our communities as a whole, in terms of their participation. Cooperation among cooperatives, one of my favorite principles. I think sharing other co-ops posts is a really great way for us to help each other. We're all doing really great work, and some of the examples I've shared here, I have shared myself, and I hope that you'll pay attention to other co-ops and help them by sharing their posts with your ownership base, which I think can help everyone. And then another way to do that is perhaps considering an ownership challenge with a co-op in a similar stage, a nearby co-op perhaps, where you have a race to 50 owners by such and such a date, and see which co-op wins, and if you can, create some fun and exciting ways for people to participate, and also grow your ownership base. Autonomy and independence we can demonstrate virtually, I think, by sharing information about existing stores and how they're serving their unique communities. We're seeing co-ops across the country do such really cool things to fit the needs of their communities. We're seeing shopping assistance where people are adopting shoppers. So if you can't shop, a volunteer will shop for you. Co-ops are offering curbside pickup, lots of unique things, plexiglass shields for their staff, and highlighting those things demonstrates to our audiences how co-ops uniquely serve their independent communities, and how we will create co-ops that fit our needs. And here's an example of a co-op that's done something to fit their community's needs. Of course, because I also help co-ops with capital campaign planning, I think it's really important to think about the principle of economic participation. This is an excellent time, if you haven't started talking about how co-ops are financed, that you start talking about that now. That we're talking about where the money comes from, the fact that capital campaigns will be part of our process, and how we'll raise the money that we need to open our store eventually. This is an excellent time to integrate some of that into your messaging. Okay, concern for community and education, probably the two most important cooperative principles, I think, right now, in terms of our current situation. And we're seeing some really great examples of co-ops demonstrating this. Prairie Food Co-op has done a really good job with a virtual farmers market. So if you haven't checked out their Facebook page, I certainly would recommend that you do that. Chicago Market has had a list of had a list of local food options in Chicago that they shared with their ownership base. I think sharing farmers in action is also a really great way to demonstrate concern for our community. Prairie Earth Farms is a link here that I've shared, and Prairie Fruits Creamery, also an example of basically farmers. These are farms that do a great job of communicating on social media and demonstrating what's happening in their communities and in their farm. And by sharing that with our communities, we can demonstrate the value of local food and help people understand where their food comes from. Many of our folks in our audience don't have the depth of knowledge that we do in terms of where our food comes from. I've also seen co-ops sharing social services resources, which I think is an excellent idea. Food distribution information, if there are food kitchens or food handouts, sharing that kind of information can be an excellent source of information for our audiences. And considering perhaps a virtual food drive where we pool funds to buy a CSA share that gets donated to a local food bank, for example, or a local domestic violence shelter, something like that has a need for healthy food. So lots of ways that we can demonstrate concern for community education as well. I'm seeing co-ops do lots of great things here in terms of sharing educational opportunities with their audience. And I think one thing I don't think I stressed earlier, but I do want to stress, is that if we are a source of reliable, positive information for our audiences, that will automatically translate into action as we move forward. So becoming that source of content can be a really great way to build your online audience and your virtual presence. And we can do that a lot through education. We can talk about cooperatives as a whole. Equal Exchange just recently had a new blog that I've linked to there that I thought was really quite interesting, highlighting the cooperative principles like we've talked about here. I've seen lots of co-ops highlighting those principles lately, and I think that it's an excellent way for us to demonstrate to the community as a whole why we're doing what we're doing and how we operate. Lots of opportunities to talk about healthy eating, you know, boosting your immune system by eating the right foods. And I've seen co-ops do cooking classes as well. Prairie Food Co-op had an Ask a Chef virtual class. And there's lots of different cooking articles and things we can share about ingredient swaps when you run out of a certain thing, and you know, how to make substitutions in a recipe. And gardening, you know, it has seen a resurgence, and this is a perfect time of year for that for most of us. I love that Assabet is offering gardening classes, and Clipper City posted an image about food that grows rather quickly, what you could plant now and expect to have available in less than 2 months, which I think is really interesting and engaging, and ways that we can serve as a resource to our audiences. The local food system. So, you know, we've talked about the fact that when we are purchasing food locally, we know exactly where it comes from. We know it comes from the producer almost directly to us through a CSA, farmer, or our local co-op. And knowing that is more important than ever. And I mentioned that article or the example earlier about Green Top Grocery, and how comforting it was for me, even online from thousands of miles away from my home co-op, to know that when the rest of the world was panicking, they were not. They had farmers bringing food in. They had enough supply on their shelves for everyone. And that was really kind of a pivotal moment in my thought process in terms of my realization that we can come out of this stronger than we've gone in. We might not be able to support our local economy like we're used to, but we can support our local farmers, and we can support our startup co-ops. And we don't have to, we don't have to panic when we have, when we rely on our, on a sustainable local food system. I think that sharing examples of open co-ops that provide a resilient food system during these challenging times can be an excellent way for us to communicate the value of co-ops to our audiences. Because we're startups, most of us, a lot of our audience doesn't quite understand, can't necessarily grasp the understanding of a food co-op that we can. And by sharing real life examples of open co-ops, we can demonstrate that for them. And the vulnerability that many folks are feeling in terms of their access to food right now is something that we have understood for quite some time as founders and members of the startup community movement. But many people are understanding this for the first time right now. And so it's a pivotal time for us to demonstrate to our communities that a cooperative can serve a greater purpose, more than just access to food, but also access to community. These are the same messaging considerations that I mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to reiterate them here. I'm not going to read them back to you, but I want you to think through your strategy, your thought process, and your content, and think about your communication in terms of these buckets: education, inspiration, and connection. And then I have a couple quick ideas that I wanted to share with you guys. One of them is this CoOp Bingo. Lots of people are doing bingo things. This is just a quick CoOp Bingo that you could share with your audiences, and maybe you create a game of it, maybe you don't, maybe it's just for fun. But there's lots of creative ways that we can create community. I've seen some organizations create a partnership with a local nursing home where co-op members are checking on a local senior citizen. and it's just by phone, perhaps the weekly check-in, or maybe it's a card in the mail. That's a really easy, simple way that we could create community and serve our community as well. Virtual book clubs are still happening across the gamut. Co-ops can certainly take advantage of that opportunity. And I'm also seeing organizations using potlucks, virtual potlucks, where we're all checking in over dinner together, or even a virtual happy hour. So there's lots of things to consider when we're talking about our messaging. And I've got a list of resources here too that I mentioned earlier in the session of articles and videos that I've looked at or read recently that spoke to me and perhaps will speak to you as you develop your messaging moving forward. But again, I just want to reiterate that we're all doing this for the first time. I think co-ops are more important than they ever have been. I hope and I know that we see a resurgence in our focus on community and less of a focus on us as individuals. And I'd be happy to talk through questions, and I'll let Jacqueline manage that for us here.
All right. Well, I'll touch on some things people asked during, and then people, if you're like, I want to comment, or you have a question you want me to read off, start putting those in the chat. But first up, we have one from Free Range Food CoOp. Is there right now such a thing as too much posting, and has that changed since before this all started?
Too much posting. I think there's a balance in the amount of posting. I would say you would not want to go silent. I think maintaining, a 3 post a day kind of average is probably a good place to be. That's where I would be if I were managing a social media account for a startup right now. I wouldn't say that it's necessary to increase communication too much more than you would previously, but I think it's important to maintain consistency.
I would love to add to that real quick that some of you are watching, and I think Katie's watching your pages too, have gone utterly silent. And I would rather see over posting. And I agree. They've been pushing people to 1 to 2 a day in social media. And I think 3 is absolutely valid. Just make sure you're not just throwing up every random thing, that it's quality, and 3 times a day really works. That's what I'm seeing that too. John, I hear you, John. He says sometimes that's excessive. I agree with you, and I don't think it is since COVID-19. The rules seemed excessive for a while there, and Facebook and Instagram was pushing people back to 1, 2 a day. But I will honestly say those who are posting 3 times a day, you're showing up in my feed more, and I think other people are seeing that as well. It seems that the rules have changed a little. I want to read real quick from Lori. Katie, you are amazing. You've put together a full-on marketing roadmap here for us all for the next few months. I've been doing some of this on the spur of the moment, but I can give this to my marketing volunteers and ask them to execute. Just wanted to share that.
Yay!
So we've got a lot. Let's see. Katie, this is great. You touched on increasing owners during this time. I really appreciated framing the community capitalism. Yeah, and Katie, you want to share, you're going to be doing another session on ownership growth. You want to touch on that for a minute?
Yes, yeah. So we are going to do another session on that. I do think, this is a great time for us to talk about the value that co-ops bring to the table. And we do have to, you do have to manage your messaging. This is not a sales plea. This is, and typically as co-ops, that's not how we roll anyways. We are about education and information and letting folks make that good decision. But absolutely, we'll be doing another session. Jacqueline, I think it's on the 22nd.
I think so. Right? That sounds right.
Okay, yes.
It's a whole section on that. So we asked Kate, we knew you guys would all want Katie back to talk about ownership growth. So, all right. Lori said, we're doing a great job on Facebook and Twitter, 2-3 posts a day. And I agree with you. That's easier. Instagram is hard. Do you have any tips for us folks on developing and finding images to share? It's such a different platform.
Yeah, it is a hard platform, and I have to be honest and transparent. I don't use Instagram. But I do pay attention to what happens on Instagram. I find that I use Unsplash as an image finder. I don't know, it's unsplash.com, I think, and it's free images that are available. And usually I can find an image that relates to what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I can't, but I think P6 is an excellent way to do some of this, and relying on our neighbor co-ops to help us and share some of the things that they're sharing.
Wow, people are getting talkative here. Okay, so Dana, we agree. It's good to reinforce the value of co-ops now and show care and concern and not hard sell. I think you talked about that, Katie. I would say don't let it turn into, don't ask for ownership though, but I think Katie's going to talk about how to do that with taste next week. But I'll throw that to you real quick, Katie.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a time for us to demonstrate our value. And hopefully, as we demonstrate our value, that will transition into people recognizing and taking action on that value. And I think that we'll naturally see an uptick in ownership because people see us as a resource.
And I would say Dorchester's already seen that. They sent out their newsletter yesterday. It was a thing of beauty. Actually, I will put on the list of all the things I have to link in this email for you. And they immediately got 2 or 3 new members, like from that, as soon as that newsletter went out, because it spoke so much to what people need to know right now and why the co-op is the future for community and care. So I'm going to put a quick note for that. But speaking of that, Jenny from Dorchester says, how are people having time to post 3 times a day? It sounds like she's a little panicked over that. Got any thoughts, Katie?
Yeah, it's that, you're right. It is hard. When I was in your shoes, and I do this currently with my own social media, although I'm not as active as I would be if I had a startup. But I would schedule my posts. So I would take, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours at one time at the beginning of the week and schedule out, 3 or 4 posts at minimum for the week. And that way, I'm just then supplementing with current real life shares or highlights of what's happening. I think when you create a communication strategy, which we talked about a little bit in this session, you can plan that out in a little bit more detail and with a little bit more control and consistency. And so you can invest some time up front to get your ducks in a row so that when it comes time to making those posts, it's not taking you, an immense amount of time. Volunteers, of course, are excellent ways to utilize volunteers. If of course you have to be comfortable with them and they have to have the right access. But one way to utilize volunteers in terms of your communication would be to have them draft content that gets approved then through, some kind of committee or some kind of process.
And I'm going to point back to what Katie said about P6ing. I don't remember who it was, but there's the one you start off is basically going to everyone else posts all day and just finding the best ones and resharing from your peers.
Yes.
Like that's better than silent. Do it. Also, if you're posting at least once a day, I don't think Katie or I are going to jump on you. We're saying up to 2 times a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't go silent.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think what I've done recently, I started doing this a long time ago actually, was I mark co-ops as my favorites on Facebook so that I see them more frequently. And I think I really would say my newsfeed is probably 70% co-ops. And so it's when it's what you see, it's easy to share. It takes 2 seconds to share something. And so that's a really great tip, Jacqueline.
Yeah. And then, so Scott from Food CoOp wants to know, when you say 3 posts a day, does this mean across all platforms or 3 on each? We're caught up on this a little.
Yeah. Okay. So I think many posts can go across channels. You might have to change how they're posted or change, the slant of them slightly, but you can utilize them across lots of channels. So I would say in total 3 a day would be great across your platforms. If you can share them across all platforms, that's wonderful. If you can't, share 1 on each platform possibly.
Excellent. You guys are sharing a ton of good tools, you know, cross-media posting tools, tips in the comments. So
Absolutely.
I don't usually send out the chat because there's not usually that much in it. I'm going to send out the recording of the chat too, okay? Because I'm not even going to go through all these, but there's some terrific advice going in here.
Yes,
So please
absolutely.
take a look at some of this. Some of you were like, I just need help with Facebook and Instagram. That's, and like specifically, like there's the linking things not working for me, or that is a good time to probably reach out directly to a peer, to us at FCI. We can see if we can help you through some of that tech. Okay, I'm gonna go down. Okay, we are seriously in the social media here, guys. Recommendations for integrating live voting into a membership meeting. Does paid Zoom let you do that with polling? Don't know if you have the tech background for that one. Yeah, I know what you're asking about. There is a way to do it, and I do not know off the top of my head, but you know who I think can help us more. Heather Lazakas, who's going to be presenting on Monday, is also going to be about messaging, but she's taking it more from the platforms and tools end. So I would say, and I just put her on the spot, she's probably on this call, but I think she might know more about it, and I'll do what research I can, and we'll take that to the Monday call. That's more tech oriented. Oh, the bingo card, loved that idea. Are you offering prizes to folks that fill it out?
Well, that's a good question. I am not. But certainly could. I think, you know, if you have co-op swag, you know, if you have t-shirts or bags printed or stickers, those could be prizes for folks. It could also just be bragging rights, you know, that you post a picture of them as the winner of the bingo challenge. I think you could tailor it to your individual circumstance.
Okay. Great. And your peers are answering your questions about polling in Zoom as we speak with terrific advice from Dana at Chicago Market, from Michaela at Sola Food Co-op. The answers are there. So other questions specific to things that Katie shared today that people would like to put out there? Anyone else want to talk? You can also just say you want to comment, and I'll let you have the mic. All right, I'm watching people comment and watch this show up. So we are doing bingo prizes, the drawing every time we get 20 or 30 bingo winners. Scott, you want to unmute and explain for a second?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure that out, but we're thinking we don't want to give a T-shirt away every time somebody gets one bingo card winning card, you know. But when we'll put the winning bingo cards in a bucket, and every time we get 20 winners in the bucket, then we'll give a T-shirt away or something like that.
Cool.
That's our thinking anyway. And we don't know if it's 20 or 30 or 10, but that's the kind of thinking we're doing about that.
Well, I'm just thinking, listening to Katie, that it may be the perfect timing that we're doing a rebrand and new website, and we got an article in the local online publication, and so far we got 6 new owners in April, which is hugely encouraging. So keeping in front of people, I think, is critical, however we do it.
I agree.
Okay.
And we're seeing co-ops with uptick in ownership. I mean, significant ownership increases, even in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say if you're not getting ownership growth out of this, now I'll be the bad guy. If you're not getting ownership growth right now, you're not talking enough, because it's not because we need to hard sell. It's because you're an obvious action point. People are looking for an action to take to help, and you're obvious. And co-ops that have made that, have had, and you still plenty of time to pivot and make it obvious, but those who've been able to make that obvious have actually been doing pretty good with ownership growth, I'd say. Chris wanted real quick, Chris from Fredericksburg. Now, I'm gonna warn you, Chris, we have an entire session on this coming up next Friday, so I'm only gonna take a minute or two here. But Chris wanted to ask something about talking about owner loan campaigns and stuff right now. So I'm gonna throw it over to Chris.
Thanks. So yeah, we're in the middle of an owner loan campaign. Obviously a weird time to be asking for money.
Right.
And of course we're trying to message the same thing: local food, know your source, local food economy matters now more than ever. Just wanted to know if any of you or any of the other smart co-opers on this call had any good ideas about messaging and asking for money in this turbulent time.
Yeah, one of the things I'll say about that, Chris, I've been working with Oshkosh Food Co-op. I don't think I remember seeing anyone on the call from them. they are in the midst of their capital campaign as well, wrapping up a $1.5 million campaign. And one of the messages that I think has been helpful is that this is not the right time for everyone to participate in a capital campaign. But if it is the right time for you, we need you now more than ever. We have to build a reliable food system, and we need you to do it.
And I'm gonna pause it there because I know Katie has a wealth of knowledge here, and her contact info is on the slide. And we're doing a whole session next Friday. And while me and Bonnie Husband are going to run it because we have both done owner loan campaigns in the middle of a financial crisis before, Katie has agreed that she's going to sit in and also take some questions. So we're very grateful about that. So we'll have a whole conversation there. We are at noon, and I have this funny feeling you all could tap Katie for another hour at least for her knowledge and information. But we are going to go ahead and wrap it up. So Katie's contact information is there. If you can give me just a second, I would like to go over what's coming up next in the series for those of you who can afford to stick around. So I'm going to do that right now. And so we first want to take a moment, let us thank Katie for being here today, for making this happen. We are really grateful to her, and I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this. She's presenting twice more, once on membership campaign, how to keep membership growth happening, and one on exactly what Oshkosh has done and how it's been going. So if you're looking, you've got an owner loan campaign coming up in the near future. Katie's doing an entire session with Oshkosh about how that messaging has been working in the middle of COVID-19 and what we can learn from it. So we're really looking forward to that. So thank you to Katie. And if it's going to let me switch slides, it says, okay, there you go. Just so you know, today's recording will be made available in a Google folder. We will be putting that on, yes, Facebook later today, but if you registered for this, and if you didn't, you actually can still go to our registration page and register now to get the email. We'll be emailing out everything people told me they wanted a link to that I can get my hands on, and then also the video from today and Katie's slides. They'll all be in there. That'll come out late today. So then also just real quick, want to let you know coming up tonight, if you got free time to stop by, we'll be back here on Zoom at 4:30 p.m. Central. We're trying something weekly called the Weekly Download. I'm just going to run basically an hour-long co-op cocktail hour, share some of the tips, highlights of the week, what you guys heard, what challenge you're up against, tell your peers about what you're trying. It's going to be a big conversation. So join us today at 4:30 if you've got time for that. We don't record that because it is a casual conversation and we want people to say whatever they'd like. People Like the Internet is coming up Monday from Heather Lazakas from Seven Roots Group. She's going to be talking a lot about what formats and tools to use to communicate and what will be most effective right now. Great building off of what we just learned here today. And then Tuesday, owner meeting legalities. I know this one isn't as sexy, but a lot of you have been asking, can we postpone our owner meeting? Can we do it virtually? Is this legally allowed? We have the experts, Dave Swenson and Megan Helm from Dorsey and Whitney here, who've been guiding a bunch of food co-ops through this very question, who are going to be here sharing with you. Also coming up next week, we have got the ownership growth session. I think that's next week, pretty sure. And we definitely have the session on owner loan campaigns with Bonnie and myself. So thank you everyone for your time today. Again, huge thank you to Katie Novak. And we will see you all on the next call.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.